So first up, we're going to say hello to Devni. How are you doing, Devni?
Hey, good, thank you. Thanks for
So I'd
having us
love it if you
here.
give us a bit of a detailed introduction on how it is that you came to this report.
I will do. Let me just quickly share my screen. Great, can everyone see the screen?
We can.
Fantastic. So before I go on to talk about what the project was all about and how we got to where we got to, just wanted to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Devni Acharya, and I'm a senior consultant at ARUP, which is a global engineering and professional services firm who've worked on a number of studios across the globe, with my colleague Tim, who you'll hear from later, leading a lot of that work. My background's in kind of systems thinking and systems change, with a focus on sustainable resource management. And over the last couple of years, my focus in life has been looking at how the construction industry can transition from a very carbon intensive, high waste system into a circular economy, which is all about decoupling economic and business growth from carbon emissions and resource consumption and those highly wasteful practices that we see. And so with the film industry being essentially a kind of a slightly different scale or form, but basically made up of lots of construction projects in itself, I was brought onto the project team. And the aim of the project was to develop a vision for sustainable film production. So how did we do this? So you can see on the screen there, a bit too quick. You can see on the screen there, we started off by being very fortunate enough for receiving sustainability data from 19 tentpole film productions across the UK and US, with these films having been completed in the last 5 years. And just for your benefit, tentpole films are films with budgets over 70 million US dollars. And this was really to understand the scale of impact, but also the impact areas that we really need to focus our efforts on. We also looked into existing work done in this space, what we can actually build from and not start from scratch. We interviewed people from across the industry, from studio managers, suppliers, buildings engineers, directors, set designers, and location managers, as many people really as we could. And we were very lucky enough to visit some studios, some sets, and also one location set too. And from that, we distilled all these amazing insights into a long list of sustainability actions that we critiqued and prioritized during a workshop attended by many of the interviewees, but also many others as well. And that got us to a short list that we kind of tested with a few people in the industry to understand what works and how would it work in practice, but what wouldn't, and what do we really need to put in place to make it a reality. And thereborn was the sustainable film production vision. So before I quickly go on to the vision, I just wanted to share some of the insights that we got from the carbon data. So on average, we found that a tentpole film generates 2,840 tons of carbon emissions. To put that into context, that's the equivalent amount of about 170, well, the carbon generated from about 170 average UK homes in a year. And to kind of put that into more context, you would need about 3,700 acres of forest to sequester that carbon in a year. So that's the size of 4.5 Central Parks in New York, which is massive. And bearing in mind that's just one movie that or one film that we're talking about, you would need a hell of a lot of land to offset that carbon. So really, it's not about offsetting or sequestering carbon that we really need to focus on. It's about focusing our efforts on reducing carbon emissions in the first place. So the data that you can see here is presented in a way that it was reported for transparency. But if we kind of take a slightly different lens and try to understand where the emissions are coming from, about 51% it comes from transport, so that's land transport and air transport. We have about 34% coming from mains, electricity, and gas so what people in the UK know as the grid. And we also have, from diesel generators alone, 15% of carbon emissions, which is quite crazy. But as I said, what we are showing you here is actually what's just being reported. And from our analysis, we found that not everything is being reported. It's very much a discrete set of activities. From your own kind of experiences, you can probably see that things around materials procurement, the way in which materials kind of are manufactured, make their way to the site where they're used, and eventually their waste management and a few other things are not included. So this is definitely something that the industry needs to look towards, and I will kind of touch on that in a bit towards the end of this presentation. So the vision, it was very much inspired by a quote that you can see there from an environmental innovator called Michael Braungart. And I think the quote is really poignant because it really addresses the concerns of many people in the industry that we need to restrict creativity to deliver sustainable outcomes. But Braungart is suggesting you don't need to see them as opposing agendas, but see them as complementary. And actually, in some cases, sustainability might even require more creativity. He says, we see a world of abundance, not limits. And what if humans design products and systems that celebrate an abundance of human creativity, culture, and productivity, but in a way that leaves the ecological footprint to delight in, not lament in? So that was our inspiration. And here you can see the vision quite conceptually. It's split into 5 key areas: so production materials, energy use, studio buildings and facilities, studio sites and locations, and production planning. So what is the vision in each of these areas? So production materials, and this is covering the materials, the components and tools used for productions. The vision is about adopting the life cycle approach to delivering productions with these materials, and really keeping these materials in continuous use within the industry, seeing these materials go from production to production with potentially storage in between to create zero waste. And next up, we have energy and water. And by this, we mean the operational energy and water consumed by productions. And the vision for this is really about reducing the demand as much as possible, and therefore reducing the emissions as much as possible. And whatever is residual, meeting that with renewable energy sources. Next up, we have studio buildings and facilities. So by this, we mean the design of stages, offices, post-production facilities, and other ancillary buildings. And the vision for this is very much around retrofitting suitable existing buildings to create new stage space, or retrofitting existing studios so that they can meet the latest energy performance standards. And with all of these spaces, making sure that they're designed for adaptability and flexibility to make sure that wherever there is changing demand, it can be met and you can maximize space utilization. Next up, we have studio sites and locations. And by this, we mean this full integrated system of both permanent and temporary buildings and infrastructure. And there are 2 parts to this vision. The first is taking a user-centric approach to the design of studios to support people making sustainable choices when they're on site, but also making sure that it's the users that we focus on and their experience on site. How can we support their productivity, their work-life balance? And then the second part is really about optimizing transport routes so you can minimize the amount of vehicle demand that's used for moving people and goods around. And finally, production planning. This is the systems, the processes, and the information that sit behind the delivery of productions. And this is all about the use of digital technology and shared industry infrastructure to maximize the communication and materials exchange within between the various productions happening at the same time to support this zero waste industry so that we're striving for. So what does this all mean in reality for everyone on this call and the rest of the industry who unfortunately couldn't make us today? Before I go into that, I just wanted to hand over to Siobhan, who's going to share a poll with you, I believe.
Oh, no, I think we're going to, thanks, Devni. I think we're actually going to check in with Pippa first. But thank you so much for setting up that optimistic vision. I have to say, when I first went to meet the ARUP team, I tried to explain to them how unique and special the TV and film industry are. But they just kind of quite quickly seen, you know, if they ARUP eat the construction industry for breakfast, they quite quickly got our number. I can tell you that much. What this report does is set out an optimistic vision, but clearly it is light years away from where we are now. So we've invited Pippa Harris to join us to be the voice of the production community and the voice of sanity, I think, as we move forward. So Pippa, I know you've read the report from cover to cover. How do you fancy our chances in delivering this?
Well, I mean, as you say, Aaron, it is extraordinarily ambitious what's outlined in this document, but also really exciting, because what's great about it is that throughout there are concrete examples being used. So for every solution, there are people who are already putting in practice similar solutions that are working. So it's not simply a set of ideas. These are things which are already working practically on the ground in different buildings, in different places around the world. So I think when you read it, you do feel quite heartened, because you think, well, actually, maybe we could make this work. And I think, you know, we would all accept that we've got to make it work.